Hi guys, and welcome to your recorded lecture for your second week of the ES422 Sports Biomechanics course. So what we're going to look at today is the analysis of technique, or the analysis of skilled performance, and the different ways of doing that. So I'm actually speaking to you today from Ireland. I have returned here for a week to actually get my doctoral graduation. So you'll see me here outside my house in Limerick, and I'm just about here. So just before we start, just to make sure you're prepared for what you need to do during the video. So please have your worksheet open or printed out, and have a pen and paper to either fill in your worksheet or to take some notes throughout. So just remember, you'll need to recall the information from this lecture when you are watching your video and filling in the worksheet for that section. So just try and keep some notes on what we're doing and fill in the worksheet as you're going, which will help you understand the material. So firstly, I want you to throw back through the brain memories and see, can you remember the first few things we did last time we met? So firstly, what is the aim of sports biomechanics? And secondly, what is the definition that we talked about in terms of sports biomechanics? So they are the first two questions on your worksheet. So what I want you to do now is write down an attempt at an answer. So you will be given the correct answer, but I expect to see an attempt from all of you in terms of what your first thoughts were on these two questions. So if you want to pause the video now and try and attempt to answer these two questions. Okay, so you should have an attempt written on your worksheet, and we'll go through what the answers are. So the aim of sports biomechanics. So we would aim to try and help athletes to perform to the best of their abilities, and we would also like to optimize their performance. So making sure they can get the best as they possibly can and reducing the risk of injuries while doing that. In terms of a definition then for sports biomechanics, sports biomechanics examines the effect of internal and external forces on the body during performance in sports. So there's numerous definitions for sports biomechanics, but this is the one that we actually had up on screen during our last lecture. Okay, so what we're going to do today, you can see on the top right we have some chapter numbers and book titles and also a link. So they would be the sources where all the information for this lecture and what we're going to cover next week came from. They're available on the course reserves, so they'll be important resources for you to review coming up to exams, and also in revision and possibly preparation for what we're doing over the next 2 weeks. So today we'll look solely at methods for evaluating performance. So we'll look at a number of categories that there is for evaluating skilled performance, and we'll focus on one of these categories for today's lecture and video. Next week then, we will focus on the following. So firstly, we will discuss the recommended reading. So your second task for this week was to read a journal article. The journal article is a technique analysis in sport, a critical review. So you have some key points to think about when reading that article, and we will discuss those key points at the start of our next class meeting. Following this, we'll go through some theory in terms of analysis of performance in a qualitative sense. So qualitatively analysing performance and the theory behind that. And finally, once all of you have selected a sports skill and has some videos of that skill, we will develop a phase analysis model for that. And that will be all the next time that we meet would be in week 3 of term. So back down to what we are here to learn today, and we're going to look at methods to evaluate skill performance. So the key two words here are skill performance. So we're going to be sports skills that are essential to various types of sports, and how do we evaluate performance of those skills. So we can evaluate skilled performance both in a qualitative and a quantitative way. So we said at the start that we'll focus on the qualitative side of things next week. So for today we're going to focus on the quantitative. So we should know that the difference between qualitative and quantitative from last week, where quantitative is always going to give us an outcome or a measure, a number that we can report and stand by. whereas qualitative is more descriptive, looking at how the overall performance looked and things that could possibly be right or wrong, and would usually be undertaken by coaches who have a very high knowledge of the sport. So quantitative analysis of skilled performance, you have two types. You have an outcome measure and a process measure. So we're measuring skilled performance in a quantitative way. So we can do that by measuring the outcome. So if we think of a sports skill, we want to measure the outcome. So the outcome of any sports skill would be correct execution. So if you're talking about basketball free throw, the outcome would be, did the ball go in the basket or not? That would be our outcome. So we can look at that in a controlled testing environment, or we can look at that in a match environment. So if we were to look at that in a controlled testing environment, just bear with me here and we will bring up a video. So if we were to look at this in a controlled testing environment, we may have a basketball player who we would set up in the free throw line. We would give them a set time and a set number of shots that they had to make. We could then count the number of shots that they make and the number of shots that they miss. So that would be a controlled way to test the outcome of a sports skill. We can also do that in a game. So we would look at a player's performance during an entire match, match or game. So the word match there would be a game or a complete game. And we would, at the end of the game, have a number of shots that they took, and we could say that they missed 5 and scored 20. And that would be looking at an outcome measure for that specific skill, such as basketball shot or basketball free throw. So in your worksheet, you will see that you have 2 questions related to this section. So pick 2 sports and 2 skills that you think could be measured for outcome in terms of assessing whether they were executed correctly or incorrectly, or whether the desired outcome was achieved. Desired outcome would be ball in the basket, or give me some other examples. So that would be testing the outcome of the skill, so whether the ball went in the basket. But of course a lot goes into that, putting the ball in the basket, and the process of that skill is another way to assess the performance. So if we wanted to assess the process of a basketball free throw, we would want to look at this guy's technique. So how his arms were positioned, when he released the ball, how he released the ball, and we would do that maybe through some other types of analysis. So if we look at this second video, we can see that they actually performed a biomechanical analysis on some basketball skills, free throw and a jump shot. So while that is loading, so we can see here that they're placing some markers onto the individual. Very different system to what we would use. They're activating the markers here, and then they get their athlete to complete the skill. So he does a free throw, and we can measure something from that technique. So we can look at the angles. Same for a jump shot. Completes the technique, and we can measure something from that. So the difference here is, if we were looking at the outcome of that skill, we would see whether the ball went in the basket. If we're looking at the process, we're seeing how the action was completed in order to get that outcome. So we can do that by biomechanics, as you saw in that last video, and you'll see actually again in the Ronaldo video. You can look at the process of the skill performance in other ways. Another type would be psychophysiological measures. So one example of a psychophysiological measure is assessment of gaze behavior. So gaze as in where your eyes are looking at a set time during a skilled performance. So if we were again to think about basketball, we may be thinking, where exactly is the player looking while they are completing their free throw? So are they looking at the basket? Are they looking at the ball? Are they looking at the crowd, or something we don't want them to look at? So we would try and figure out where is the best place to look in order to get a successful free throw. We have an abstract here from a journal article where the goalkeeper in hockey was fitted with this apparatus, and they wanted to see where the goalkeeper would look to get information about saving a shot. So did they look at the puck of the opponent, the body position, where the puck was, where the stick was? So the cues that gave them the information in order for them to save the shot. So the process was where did they look? The outcome was the shot saved or not? So that would be the two main groupings for quantitative skilled performance analysis. So you would look at the outcome, what happened in terms of did the skill get the achieved outcome or not, and how that was completed in terms of the process. So the qualitative analysis is something different that we'll focus on next week, and what we've just completed is the quantitative analysis. So how would you quantitatively analyse a skilled performance? So what you need to do now is watch your Cristiano Ronaldo video. So if we look at your worksheet, you should now have completed your first 6 questions. So you have 6 questions on your recorded lecture, and then you have another 9 questions which relate to your Cristiano Ronaldo video. So the thing to focus on when you're looking at this video is to remember we're thinking about skilled performance, so a performance of a skill. So they assess Ronaldo in a number of different ways in this video, and the only ones we're really interested in is the ways they assess how he completes a set skill for the sport, which his sport is soccer. So that's important to remember when you are going through your worksheet and your video. Once you've that done, you'll need to read your journal article. So if you go to your EduCap page, you should be able to get access to the article Technique Analysis in Sport, a Critical Review. So that link, there's a link on the EduCap page, will bring you to the site where you can download that journal article. You will have to be connected to the NMU network in order to do that. So if anyone has any problems, make sure you email me and I can help you out with that. So you will read that journal article and focus on these 4 questions, which we will discuss the next time we meet in class. The other thing you need to do to prepare for your qualitative analysis lecture next week is to select a sports skill. So any sport you like, a skill that you are very interested in that sport, and I want you to find a video showing an expert performing that skill and also a video with a novice performing that skill. So I want you to actually email me the links for those videos and the sports skill of your choice by Monday the 28th. So that is Monday week at the moment. But Monday the 28th of January I would need to have that information by email from you.